And how is everyone this evening?
It's lovely.
Good.
Not bad. Whoa.
Hello, Paulina. Everybody. Hello, Doug. Hi. Hello, Rita.
Hey.
Good evening, all.
I see your telephone receiver on the screen, Dan.
I'm not a technology fan.
Ah,
I think they call that a Luddite.
yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
You could be called something worse.
I'm sure I have been.
Yeah, I just don't want to kill that. I mean, he could call and see what he, 1683, see what he has in mind.
Christy, do we have anybody waiting?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Paulina, you've got a huge delay on your connection.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of feedback.
Yeah,
Also,
it's a reverberation type.
okay, just Dan, I wanted to make sure that that was you because the other phone number when you were talking was lighting up. So I don't know who this other phone number is.
This is Russ on phone. I don't know if you identify me.
That's it. I've got you backwards. Thank you, Russ. Hold on just a sec.
Okay.
Christy, are we ready to go then?
Paulina, I've noticed in prior meetings, your connection's been very good, so I think it might be worthwhile for you to just disconnect and dial back in. You're almost unreadable.
Good evening,
Caller with
everybody.
the phone ending 379, we have really strong feedback on your phone. Could you please mute it?
Sounds like they're on the road.
There we go.
Yeah, that's much better.
Paulina, you're muted. Hmm.
Okay, we'll try that. Can you hear me better?
Oh, yeah, that's a lot better.
Phew.
Good job.
All right. So thank you all for coming. This is going to be a fast-paced meeting, just saying, because we got a long agenda. First of all, I'll just briefly go over what we're going to do tonight. 6:30 to approximately 7, George Van Humissen, the committee chairperson for the Parks Plan, is going to do a presentation and overview. At 7 o'clock, I'm going to do a call through first the Planning Commission members and then the council. And what I do want to focus on are the 3 very large pages that were attached loosely to the plan that came to you. The first page are the policies. They're not numbered, but they're 1 through 18. I'm going to figure if you don't say anything, we're going to assume that you consent somewhat to what is in the plan. And I'm also making an assumption that you've read the plan and are familiar with it a little bit. Second, once we do that in a round table through the commission and the council, then we will try and move on to the proposed future parks and trails draft. And on that, we're going to focus on short, medium, and long-term goals and trying to get a sense of prioritization on that. And if we have time, we'll do the one on existing parks, capital improvement. Same thing, short, medium, and long-term. And other than just saying thank you so much to George, Austin, Molly, Skylar, and Doug for some really awesome work. I think we've got a great start to this Master Parks Plan. And George, take it from here.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I've met many of you at various times, but not all of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm George Van Humissen. I have served as the chairperson of the Parks Master Plan Advisory Committee since last July. That honor befell on me because at the first meeting, I was the only one willing to take the job. I haven't timed this presentation, but I do commit to being off the stage no more than 30 minutes, which is 7:06, but I'm going to try to make it shorter than that because I think the main point of this meeting is for the Planning Commission members and City Council members to be able to discuss amongst themselves. I'm joined here today by all of the rest of the committee members. I'm sure that many of you know many of them, but there is some background information about me and all of the other members in the draft plan that we sent around last week. But they are Molly Meyer, Skylar Archibald, Doug Doherty, and Austin Tomlinson, who are all participating in this meeting now. The group has asked me to be their spokesperson for tonight, but all 5 members were of equal importance and equal votes throughout the process. Before I get into the draft, I want to just say a few words of thanks, echoing what the mayor said, but in particular, I want to thank the Planning Commission and the City Council for initiating this process. All of the members of the committee feel that parks are really important, that Gearhart's parks in particular are of critical importance to all of us. We learned during the committee's work that our views that these are important are widely shared in the community. And we're glad that the commission and the council feel that this effort is worth the resources and the focus as we do. In addition, I want to thank the committee members. The 5 members participated in 14 long, detailed meetings, and also did a lot of work independent of the meetings on their own, researching and doing other things to contribute to the committee's work. We were also supported by staff, Christy Flicker and Cheryl Lund, but in particular, Carol Connell, the city planner, and Chad Sweet, the city administrator, both participated in almost all of the process, were actively involved with the committee all the way through. Finally, I want to thank the public. We did a detailed public survey. We received 417 responses. It took quite a bit of work to read them, collate them, analyze them. But that input was very, very valuable and very important in shaping the committee's conclusions. And I want to thank everybody who participated in that. A few words about what we see as the purpose of the committee and my thoughts about the purpose of the meeting tonight and what we're trying to do here. First, I want to say that from the beginning, the committee has understood that our role in this process is strictly advisory only. Our primary objective was to develop a draft plan that gets it far enough that it is ready for consideration by members of the Planning Commission and the council. Of course, a great deal of work goes into producing a draft like this. It's a long document. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of opinion gathering. There's a lot of debating. There's a lot of drafting, etc. I certainly feel, and I believe the other committee members also feel, that we did a good job at that. That there was a lot of work and a lot of success in accomplishing the objective. So we're presenting tonight a plan that I feel good about, and I believe the committee all feels very good about, and we certainly hope that the Planning Commission and Council will feel the same when we're done. We believe that the draft we have submitted is adequately comprehensive, but not excessively detailed. It is not intended to be a tool for micromanaging the parks going forward. It's intended to be more of a policy document covering broad scope, themes, values, and major direction. But it's not intended to be detailed project plans. It's not intended to be operational plans. It's more like the comprehensive plan or the transportation plan. We think the proposed policies that are contained in this draft are the right policies. We think we've covered what needs to be in there, and we have left out what shouldn't be in there. We think the policies that we're proposing are in the public interest and that they appropriately balance the various competing objectives of various members of the committee, of course, or not of the committee, but of the community. Of course, in any community, not everybody agrees on everything. We have tried to consider lots of views and reach balanced, appropriate policies that we think are in the public interest. We think it's appropriately restrained. We did not try to solve every problem. We did not try to analyze every issue, but we tried to get what we thought needed to be covered. But at the same time, I believe that it is sufficiently forward-looking and sufficiently ambitious that it is supportive of building on Gearhart's successful past to help produce an even better future. The purpose of my presentation here and what I hope will be accomplished tonight is I'm making some brief comments here about process. I'm going to quickly walk you through the plan, more focused on structure, not really covering all the content because I'm not going to read it to you. I assume that all the members of the commission and the council have read it already. And we'll probably reread it again after this meeting. But I will be available throughout this meeting to answer questions if you have any. But my view is the main point is for you all to discuss it as soon as I stop talking. When you're done discussing it, we hope there will be some sort of decision on direction and the possible outcomes that I think are the two most likely outcomes are best case scenario. I'm hoping that the consensus of the commission and the council will be that this plan is good and very close to being what you would want to adopt, and that you will direct staff to take it from here to produce, maybe polish it up, not make any substantive changes, but polish it up in preparation for the upcoming public hearing with consultation with the committee as staff feels is useful and necessary. Of course, we also recognize that it's entirely possible that the consensus of the council or the commission might be that that the draft is seriously deficient and that it needs to go back to the committee for further work to either add more things that were left out or delete things or reconsider some of the policies that were proposed. I hope that's not what happens, but if that is the direction, the Master Plan Advisory Committee is ready, willing, and able to continue to work on the document. Before I jump into the plan, I just want to show whoever's got control of this. Do I have screen sharing?
Let me turn it on for you.
Looks like I do have it. Nope, you have it turned off, but
Okay, give it a try.
perfect. Are you seeing the map that I'm showing? Christy, are you able to see the map?
No, George, you're not.
Mm-mm.
We're only able to see your icons so far.
Okay, hang on. I'm sorry. Just take a sec. Let me redo that. Share screen. There we go. Okay, that should do it. Now, do you see the map?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to show two pictures. This is the first. I'm sure most of you have seen this at one point or another in your travels throughout working with the city or just being a Gearhart participant. But this is the first of two that I want to show that I found inspiring and that I think kind of set the stage for the document. And I found inspiring to me in this process. In researching plats to understand a lot of the historical land use and how things got the way they are, this is a document I came across that is the original plat for Gearhart. And it has the notations in red, of course, were added later, but the underlying document is the original plat. This was the plat recorded by Marshall Kinney back on August 21st, 1890. And what I wanted to point out that I had never realized before I got involved in this effort is that before there was a city of Gearhart, there was Gearhart Park. And it struck me as particularly noteworthy that when this area was originally conceived, it was conceived of really in total as a park. And in some ways it still is. And I think for many people in the community, really all of Gearhart is a park. We of course do not take that position in this plan, but it's more of a philosophy. In this document, you can see, I don't know, are you guys able to see my cursor moving? No.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
okay, couple things I want to point out. Of course, when Gearhart was first platted, it only went, the farthest west it went was Cottage. There's been a lot of development further west towards the ocean. But I think it is noteworthy that in particular, the ridge path is evident as a key element of the community from the very beginning. This was in the first plat. The street identified here as 6th Street is now known as Pacific Way. Somewhere along the way, the city renamed all the streets. I think it's also noteworthy that Neocoxie Creek played such a central role in the how it was envisioned originally. And in particular, all along the west side was basically undeveloped land and not even intended for development. Now, subsequently, much of this has been developed. I'm going to stop this. And I'm going to put up one more picture. Do you all see the photograph now? Yes. This is one of a number of photographs that I obtained by doing some research at the Oregon Historical Society. And I have several others like this, but this one I thought was particularly striking because of the canoe in it. And it really emphasizes what Neocoxie Creek used to look like. There's no exact date on this photograph, but based on how it relates to some other photographs, I believe that it is in the mid 1890s as well. So very close to the time that the city was originally platted. And this struck me as really a good representation of how beautiful Neocoxie Creek was and could be again. And one of the ideas that is shared by all the committee members is that this is an enormously valuable resource to the community that has kind of been lost over the years and historically was unbelievably beautiful. And is a major opportunity for restoration in the community's interest. Of course, there's private property along both sides of that, and everybody involved in the committee has a respect for private property rights, and any activities would need to be done in coordination with people that own the property along the river. But it, I think, provides somewhat of a inspirational vision of what can be done. That bridge is the bridge over Pacific Way. Today, that looks more like a drainage culvert. Okay. Those of you who have the master plan, which is this document, I'm not going to leave this up because I don't think it works very well to page through a document via Zoom. But those of you who have the document might want to page through it as I talk. But I'm going to let you look at me instead of the paper, and but you can page through it. If you read it carefully, you'll see that it's not yet perfectly formatted. There are a few small missing pieces that weren't done in time to distribute for this work session, but we think all the important substance is all completed. The whole document is 95% or more complete, and certainly sufficiently complete to have public hearing, but to the extent desired by council, it could be polished up by staff with consulting with the committee as they feel necessary between now and the public hearing. The draft is 67 pages long. It contains 8 sections. Section 1 provides some information about what is the purpose of the plan and the objectives of the plan, what's in the plan, and how it's organized. Section 2 is focused on process. How did the committee go about its work? How was this plan developed? And a few points I want to make about that is that the planning area that we focused on is the area within the urban growth boundary. So it's not all just the city limits, it's the urban growth boundary. And we tried to be aware of areas outside the urban growth boundary that are adjacent to and directly adjacent to the city, but really we focused on planning within the urban growth boundary. We felt that the planning horizon is at least 20 years, and officially the notion that we put in the plan is that the planning horizon is 20 years, but the committee recognizes that decisions that get made in these kinds of documents often have ramifications that go on much beyond the planning horizon, the intended initial planning horizon. The last point I want to emphasize is that this document not only does not try to duplicate anything in other city documents, but we tried to avoid duplicating information that's already in the comprehensive plan or the transportation system plan or the zoning ordinance. Of course, all of those documents need to work together, but our feeling is they don't need to be redundant. We also tried to respect all those previously adopted documents so that we're not taking issue with things that have already been decided. Section 3 talks about the connection of this plan to the city's long ago adopted comprehensive plan. And we feel that there are many sections of the plan that are pertinent. We listed a whole page of highlights that we thought were particularly pertinent, but we feel very strongly that everything in the plan that we have put forward is entirely consistent with the policies as well as the values and sentiments expressed in the comprehensive plan. Section 4 of the document provides detailed information about properties that exist in and around Gearhart that we felt were relevant for purposes of anybody thinking about parks. That includes not just the city-owned parks that are actually designated parks that are owned by the city, such as the Leslie Miller Dunes Meadow Park or the park that has the tennis courts on it. Those are, of course, the principal properties when people think of Gearhart parks, but they're not the only park. They're not the only properties that we thought were important to take note of and to describe in this plan. The other properties are other publicly owned parks, such as the beaches. The beach is owned by the state of Oregon. It's not a city-controlled property, but it's certainly relevant. We also included private property that is zoned as park and open space. The most significant example of that is the Gearhart Links Golf Course, which is privately owned, but is zoned as parkland. And then there are a list of other private properties that are used in some kind of park-like shared use. Although they're private, they are subject to city zoning ordinance and other things. And we thought they're relevant to anyone trying to understand parks in Gearhart and plan for them. And we included also private property that is not a park and not zoned park, but is in some ways, we think, important to take note of, such as the lands owned by the North Coast Land Conservancy. Section 5 is focused on public input. That's a significant section. Page 17 in particular, I would draw your attention to, which is a map graciously put together by Austin that shows the location of the homes of the people who submitted survey responses. I thought that was important to include that because it gives you a good sense that it is really a community-wide input. It was interesting to note how much of the community agrees. There are some areas of some disagreement, but I would say there is far more consensus in the community than there is disagreement. The summary of the public input includes information about what the community feels is the most important parks and activities, issues and concerns about existing parks, desires for new parks or park programs as opposed to facilities, long-range goals and top priorities, and a variety of other miscellaneous information, the most notable of which I think is that 76% of the respondents, and I will note that this was not a scientific survey, but for those who chose to respond, 76% said they would support increased spending on existing parks, and 65% said that they would even support increased spending for additional parks. Section 6 is, of course, the most important part because it takes all of the factual information about process and properties, et cetera, and input, and then reaches conclusions about what the city's policies should be. There are 18 specific policies that the committee recommends in this, be included in this document. These policies did not come about easily. They were debated, things were added, things were deleted, they were refined over many, many meetings. And in the end, these were the conclusions the committee came to. This is what we recommend. I want to point out in particular that the committee has authorized me to say, and I think it's important to point out, that this recommendation comes with a 100% unanimous support of the committee. There are no dissenting votes. There were no partial agreements. During development, there was a lot of discussion, but where we did not have complete buy-in, we continued to discuss and debate and reached compromises until we reached a point where everybody said they were fully on board. So we tried hard to get to unanimous support, and I'm pleased to say we were successful in achieving that goal. Section 7 is some appendices that just provide some background information that we think is relevant to people who would be reading the plan or could be helpful to people who are reading the plan now or in the future. That's my overview of what we've done so far, why we're here, what we've submitted. So in conclusion, I would say we submit this draft for your consideration. We recommend that you approve it, and we await further orders. Thank you.
Thank you, George, very much. And I'm going to move right into then a roll call through the Planning Commission members. And if you would turn your attention to the large 11 by 14 page, it says proposed park plan policies draft. And if I wrote down the Planning Commission members I saw on my screen. So if I missed someone, if they're calling in by phone, if staff could help me out. But let me start with Stephanie Dudley. And if you could just give us any comments you wish to make with regard to the 18 policies, most particularly if you do not like something, and otherwise anything that you are in agreement with. And Stephanie, you have the floor.
You're on mute, Stephanie.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, good. No, I was very impressed with the entire plan. I read it from cover to cover, and I really have no concerns of any of these 17 or 18 areas. And I think that we could probably move forward. That's it.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And next, Dave Smith.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have no real concerns about what I've seen so far. I would like to spend some more time digging through the weeds of the draft, but at this time, I don't see any reason why we cannot move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Russ Taggart.
Yes, yeah, I've looked at everything too, Paulina. I guess the only area that I have a little concern about is we're talking about a new public works position, or a parks commission with a public works commission position being utilized to fill a spot for that job. I guess I question the need for that at this point, but I don't know. Anyway, I just seen the parks we have and the way we're taking care of them. That's an area have a concern. I guess I do. We talk about the ridge path to be restored, and I'm not quite sure what that means. I guess to me, the ridge path is what it is, other than the fact that it has been encroached upon by homeowners and vegetation, which I do agree that it should be established to a width with proper access. And I'm not sure what we mean. If it's that, I agree with it. If it's turning it into something other than a natural trail, I disagree. But the rest of it, I think, is great.
Super. Thank you for your comments. And Austin?
Yeah, having worked on this with the Parks Commission, I have no comments or anything to add to these policies at this moment. I'm happy to work with anybody in the Planning Commission or the City Council who has any issues with what we've proposed. So I think it's great what we've got so far. So.
Super. Thank you. Thank you, Austin. And Ginny?
I want to hear what the public has to say. We'll have the public hearing next week, and I want to hear what they've got to say about it.
Okay. No other comments at this time then?
No.
All right. Thank you. And Christy, can you tell me, are there any other planning commissioners on this call?
Terry Graff, I'm on the call.
Thank you, Terry. Go ahead.
I have read the report. I think they did an incredible job. I have no problem with the policies that they recommend, and I will support them fully.
Super. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other planning commissioners that I didn't see?
Sharon.
Oh. Sorry?
Sharon?
Sharon Klepfer here.
Oh, Sharon, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I just want to thank all of you. It looks like you put a ton of hard work into this, and it's a masterful master plan. I did have a couple of thoughts about it, however. The first one is under policy number 4. I would love to see something about an estuary riparian zone. I don't know if that's the proper place to include that, but I think that's an important thing to be covered at some point. And I thought that the Parks Committee was going to cover that. Secondly, under policy number 4, I strenuously object to the wording of ocean views. We've been through this and down this road in the past, and that's my comment on that. Under policy number 7, I didn't see anything about landscaping in all the improvements to the Trails End area. And then my last thought is that I would love to see a policy that addresses something that, for lack of a better term, I would call environmental integrity. And that would be protection of the flora and fauna habitats. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Sharon, very much for those ideas. I was trying to jot some of those down as you spoke. Is that all the Planning Commission then? Sorry, I don't have a list right in front of me.
That's all.
All right, great. Thank you. And so moving on to the City Council, Dan Jesse, your impressions on the policies.
Overall, I'm very happy with the document. I know that in section 15, it does say that City of Gearhart will not actively go after closing down driving on the beach north of the 10th Street approach. I do believe that as motor racing was actually part of driving on the beach back in the, shortly after the turn of last century. Driving on the beach north of the approach on 10th Street is an integral part of our community, both for our locals as well as not, people from all over, I suppose. And I would hate to see that ever impeded upon. And so I would just like to see the language changed that really we're not interested in closing down driving on the beach north of 10th. I'm all for whatever we can do to keep people off the beach south of 10th, but to me, there's a distinction that needs to be drawn there and keep the beach open north. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And next, Carrie Smith.
Okay. I also have, just as it's been said, heartburn with the ocean views on policy number 4. And is there a way that when you put someone on this Parks Commission for removing a person who is either one totally outside of reality or let's say is not willing to work with people in a cooperative fashion? So if that could be included in it, I think this is a great document, but those are my 2 issues.
Okay, thank you. And next, Rita.
Okay, so I also had a little bit of heartburn over the ocean view clause, because I thought we had covered this back in the day when we had the Dune and Vegetation Management Committee. But other than that, I think that you guys put a lot of hard work into this, and it was a wonderful draft. And I want to thank all the members that contributed. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Rita. And Brent Warren, please.
Couldn't get unmuted. Sorry about that. Well, I want to echo what others have said. This is a very excellent report. I think you guys are to be commended It's clear that a lot of thought and research went into this. Had a few questions about it. The structure as a separate commission, it may be better served as a subcommittee of the Planning Commission. The part about the separate commission having the authority to contract and hire could be problematic because we have a hierarchy and structure put in place to reduce conflicts and things like that. Let's see, had a little bit of confusion. I read the beach access section probably 3 or 4 or 5 times. There were sentences that I had difficulty understanding which side of the coin you were trying to fall down on, and then as I read later on, it was clearer, but some of the sections I didn't think added anything. They just caused confusion. So maybe a little more editing would be good. Let's see. Oh, the qualification for being on the commission had a home ownership requirement. And I don't know that that is such a good idea, because there could be people who have been longtime residents of Gerhardt that are renting. And why would they not be able to serve on the commission? I think maybe better language would be resident or voter in Gerhardt rather than property owner. The Ridge Path, yeah, I didn't understand what restoration meant. So George, I don't know if that meant restoring it back to what it was in 1886 or just making it walkable. And I think that the city has done remarkable work within the past year or so. I don't know when the last time you guys have walked it, but I walk it every week, and the paths have had brush cleared, and there's bark dust or bark mulch laid down on the path. So I don't know what additional path restoration you had in mind. Oh, it had language about grooming the 10th Avenue access to the beach, and I don't really know what grooming means really, because it is groomed, what I thought was groomed, at least on an occasional basis. It doesn't last. That's the problem. It's sand. So the wind blows, the water hits it, and cars get stuck. So I think the only solution to avoid not getting stuck would be to pave it. And I'm not sure that that's the type of grooming that you had in mind when that was written, but maybe you can shed some light on that. Anyhow, that's about all my comments. Again, I think you guys did a wonderful job, a lot of good work, and I think the city can benefit from your suggestions tremendously. So thank you very much.
And I'm going to close it out. I'll just give a few comments. With regard to policy number 2, I I know we're going to be hopefully working on a land swap that includes some property that is zoned R1 in the dunes for a piece that will be buildable up in the urban growth boundary. And I just don't want anything in number 2 to make it so that that couldn't happen. I don't think it does, but it would be something that I would want staff to check on for sure. On number 4, the vegetation in the dunes, I agree with some of what has been said. I said something about what my comment is that we may not be able to provide unobstructed or complete views of the ocean. There's just so many variables. And so perhaps that wording could be softened a little bit. On Leslie Miller Dune Park, number 5, I wasn't sure if First Street was signed as no parking, and that's, again, just a staff follow-up. It's where the plan says that we only have a 30-foot right-of-way at that location. On number 8, I'm wondering if the ridge path needs much more than being identified on a trail map rather than signage. Although I do like the idea of having some small amount of, I hesitate to call it a fence because it's not a fence, but markings of where the path is, particularly where we're close to some of the newer homes that are being built, because the barrier right now is black plastic of some sort, or a black type of fabric that will probably not last very long. On the Parks Commission, I'm not sure about commission. I am starting to look at commissions versus committee. I think a committee would certainly work, but I do think it's important that we use our current land use committee, the Planning Commission, and as a step, and perhaps we could have a parks group be a working committee for one area of that. The Planning Commission might ultimately work through land use issues. And funding perhaps to go directly to the council. And finally, on number 16, it just says elk, and I know it's just a small statement in the plan, but we are signing the cooperative agreement for the elk collaborative, and tomorrow actually, and I'm not sure we need it. So I wonder about that one just coming out altogether. Because it's not just elk. We have a lot of animals, that are living in our open spaces in our woods, and I'm just not sure we need that. And that are all my comments on the draft so far. I really think it's an excellent document, and
Elena, would it be okay with you if I took just 2 or 3 minutes to respond to some of those? Because I think it might be helpful to the council member.
Yes, absolutely, George.
Okay, so I'm not going to respond to every point, but a few in particular on policy number 2, with respect to your concern, Paulina, about potential future land swaps. I want to just clarify that the intent of that policy, and I think it's clear, but certainly no harm in having staff review it to make sure to satisfy you. But the intent of the committee is that anything that is currently zoned as a park will stay zoned as a park, but that there's no restriction on adding new parks. I don't think the area that you're talking about having a land swap would involve transferring something that is currently a park into some other property. I think it's only going the other way.
Right.
In policy number 4, I think at least 3 people responded to or commented on the issue of the ocean views. And I want to just give you a little background about that. Sharon, I certainly appreciate your comments because I remember many discussions on this point with you in the dunes vegetation context. And I think that we're in agreement on intent, I hope. But an earlier version of this, I think everybody is aware that there are many members of the community who think that ocean views are the most important thing. There are also many members of the community who strongly disagree with that view and think that the view they like is the view of the dunes or the view of the elk. An early version of this said preservation of ocean views. It didn't mean to imply only ocean views, but there was a lot of discussion about on the committee, the notion that we need to be sensitive to both perspectives. And so the language was changed to say preservation of scenic views, ocean views being one of those, but certainly not the exclusive one. And I know personally, as I've gotten older, I go to the beach less and I enjoy the dunes more. And so I'm very sympathetic to both views. And I think they're both reasonable and rational and that they can both be accommodated without entirely siding on behalf of either camp. With regard to Sharon's concern about the estuary riparian zone, I think that it probably wouldn't hurt to add that that specific language into policy number 3, but that policy number 3 was intended to cover not just the dunes along the west side, but also along Ocean Little Beach, which is the estuary. So it says estuary in the title, but that certainly could be beefed up to make that clearer. Paulina, your question about in policy number 5, the First Street right of way, that is already signed no parking. There are signs along that. And I became aware of those and I researched why that is on that side and not on the other side. It's because the right of way on that side is narrower. So we're only saying it should stay the way it is.
Thank you.
In policy number 7, I agree, there is no mention of landscaping, and that probably is something that should be addressed, but there would need to be a little discussion about what should it say. I don't have an opinion at the moment, but that is something we could talk about. Policy number 8, a number of people asked, what the heck you mean by restored? Let me just give you a few thoughts. The committee did not define this word. In our discussions, there was no expression of that needed to be defined. My view is what it means is you should be able to walk from one end to the other unobstructed, and that encroachments or things that people have done that degrade or hamper public access or degrade the aesthetics should try to be restored. I would expect the city to use restraint, both for economic reasons as well as that the Ridge Path has private property on both sides of it, all the way from one end to the other. These are people's homes. It runs essentially through people's side yards or backyards. And I know I value community harmony. So there's no intent to take a bulldozer and drive down and say, we need a 25-foot wide clear path. That's not the case, but it should be usable. I think the city has made some significant progress in restoring, even while we were working on this draft, particularly on the north part of it, where 2 or 3 months ago, it was almost impassable. And I go for a run on that path regularly, and it's been improved dramatically. However, there are parts where you got to duck, and people who are less agile, we have a community with a lot of older people in it. We'd like to make it not necessarily, it's impractical to make it fully, wheelchair accessible, but somebody who is ambulatory in reasonably good health should be able to walk the whole pathway. That's kind of the intent, year round. And by the way, the effort recently to build the bridge from, I believe it's 8th Street to 10th Street, which is underway, that is an important part of restoring it to make it usable. It's not completed, but that's an excellent step in the right direction. That's sort of what I think this means. And what I believe the committee meant for it to mean. On policy number 12, I want to just address one point that Brent made, because I think, Brent, I apologize that some of the language is dense. My father was a lawyer and he taught me to write, and sometimes I write more like a lawyer than a novelist. And so I try to be crystal clear, but sometimes it gets dense. As to who can be on the commission, I think it's clear here. It says there shall be 5 voting members of the commission, each of whom must be a person over the age of 18. And then there are 2 possible qualifications with respect to property. You could insert the word either, but who is a direct or indirect owner of real property. That's one category. So if you own it, you're on the deed, you qualify. If you're an indirect owner, like you're a member of an LLC, there's a lot of family properties that are owned through LLCs or trusts. That's an indirect owner, that's fine. Within the city, or you are a non-owner resident, which is specifically meant to say, we're not considering whether you are short-term, long-term, you rented it, you leased it, you have a 1-year lease, whatever. You're a non-owner, but you're a resident of the city.
I'm sorry, I misread that then, because I thought it said a non-resident owner.
No, it says a non-owner resident. And in particular, we made a point of saying, regardless whether you are full-time, permanent, or part-time seasonal, it's intended to be inclusive.
Then my apologies. My apologies, I misread it.
And my hope is that the mayor, whoever the mayor is, as we go forward in time, there will be many of them in the coming years, with the consent of council, would appoint a diverse group that would represent the various kinds of people who are involved in the community. And Carrie, I completely agree with your concern that this document is not intended to actually establish the commission. There would need to be an ordinance developed that provides all the detail. This document is intended to set the intent and to get the ball rolling. But of course, there should be a process for removing members that turn out to be bad actors, for malfeasance or whatever. Essentially they serve at the pleasure of the council. And I would assume it would be something like the provisions that apply to the planning commission. On policy number 15, I want to point out something which I believe is kind of like Brent's misreading of the last one. And I want to point out to Councilor Dan Jesse that what you said you want is exactly what we believe this says, but if it may be unduly dense and perhaps it could be stated more clearly. But I just want to direct your attention to, it says, this is about 5 lines down. However, the city will, and then B, use its best efforts to oppose any attempt to modify any law or regulation of any other governmental authority. What that means is if the Oregon State Parks were to say, well, we want to stop driving north of 10th Street, the city is saying, no, we are in favor of basically preserving the status quo. There's no cars south of 10th Street, but driving north of 10th Street is a long-standing tradition that has gone on for decades, if not hundreds of years. And so you would oppose any modification which would prohibit any use of vehicles that is presently allowed on the public beach north of 10th Street. So that's the intent of the policy, is exactly what you said you'd like. Now, there are people who would like to stop all driving on the beach, but the committee recommends we stick with the status quo. No cars south of 10th, cars are still allowed north of 10th. That's the intent. On policy number 16 regarding elk, if council wanted to delete that because it's been covered by a separate city policy, it's my belief that nobody on the committee would object. The purpose of that statement is essentially to say that we looked at this, we talked about it, and we intend for the city to continue to cooperate as we think is being done by that cooperative agreement. I don't think this statement adds a lot, but we put it in because we didn't want anybody to think that it was not an issue that we looked at. That's it. That's all my comments.
Thank you, George, for those responses. And I'm gonna just go ahead and move on then to the next page. And thank you all for sharing. That was really good dialogue, and I think it just moves this plan forward just a little bit. So the next one that I have, and I'm just Christy, if we had people use the raise hand, can we do a count of short? If I ask for short term, can you count raised hands?
There are no raised hands that I can see.
No, I mean, if I say, like, I've moved on to the next page, which is the proposed future parks and trails. If I say Fire Station Park, can people hit a raised hand? Can you count them?
Yes.
Does that work?
Mayor Polina, this is Chad. So some people
ahead.
will be able to raise hands, some people will not be able to. It depends on their device that they have or the version of software that they're running. So that might be tough, including for the
Okay.
people with the phones.
All right, well, I'm just gonna ask, then I'll figure it out as we go. So I'm gonna go through these one at a time. And I want people to unmute and chime in. And I'm gonna start with long-term plan. And the choices are gonna be long, medium, and short for each one of these new parks. And so we'll start with Fire Station Park. That would be in Northwest Gerhardt. And let me ask if there is agreement that this should be a long term.
Hey, Paulina, this is Russ, and I don't understand where that is.
This is on the second large page that was with the plan.
No, I know, I'm on the right page. I don't know what Fire Station Park is.
Okay,
You say Northwest Gerhardt.
in the proposed subdivision north of Shamrock Pines, there is a park in that plan, as well as
I'm with you.
As well as the area for the fire station. So it'd be a neighborhood park for that location. So would that be long-term? And if you could just go through planning commissioners, just a yay or a nay on long-term.
Could we define what short, long, and medium term are?
Well, short-term would probably be 1 to 3 years. Medium, maybe 4 to 6. Long-term, 7 to 10.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thanks.
Lina, is that the establishment of it, or is that just the?
That would be establishing it.
Okay.
Yep, establishing the park. So I'm going to say long-term, and just give me a yes if that's where you think it should fit.
Taggart
We'll
says
just count.
no.
Any yeses that it should be long-term?
David Smith.
I've got 1 yes. Okay, let's ask if it should be medium term.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
for Taggart.
Yes, Sharon Klepfer.
Yes,
Okay.
Austin.
and- Okay, I've got about 4 people, and then short term. 1 to 3 years. This is still for number 1, the fire station park.
I'm for short term.
Anyone else? So I'm going to give that a medium. Got the most responses on that. For the East Side Park, I'm going to move on. That would be a park, either the big pond on the east side, possibly the railroad station. Obviously, this is not set in stone. I think what's important to think about is that this would be a park on the east side of the highway to help serve the individuals who live on the east side of the highway. Property acquisition is set at about $1 million, development at 300,000. Would that be a long-term goal?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think a majority, but just to be sure, I'm gonna say, is that a medium-term goal?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think long has it. And anybody think that's a short-term goal? Okay, moving on. This is the trails. The G Street parcel, there's a small parcel that the city owns that connects to Neocoxie Creek. Possibly could have an interpretive platform or a dock or connect trail to the Chinook Nation Longhouse. Also, any transportation system plan, trails, sidewalks, or bike facilities. There is a cost to that at $60,000 for a dock and a deck and trail, maybe some signage. This would serve Southeast Gerhardt specifically. Short, medium, or long-term? Excuse me, let me just say, is this a short-term goal?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd go for short.
Yes.
Okay, I'm hearing at least 6, and so medium term?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
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 At least 3 to 4, and long term?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put small / medium, because I think it could be either at this point. Next one is the Ridge Path extension. This would take it north of Highland Lane.
Or to Highland Lane.
Sorry, Carol, you might need to chime in here. Carol Connell.
Yeah, right. It should be Gerhardt Loop Road to Highland Lane. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
To Highland Lane, yes.
And that would be theoretically on the west side of Neocoxie, is that right?
There would be various ways to piece something together. If it could not be, for instance, it would be ideal along the west side of the Neocoxie, but you know, it's also possible to have sections of it on Pine Ridge Drive that would then take it up to the fire station park, and then that would take you to Highland Lane. There could be a few routes. So maybe you'd like to consider it in general, whatever routes we can piece together, with maybe Neocoxie Creek being the preference.
Okay. And that could have some emergency evacuation. It may fit with that a little bit, but
Good
so
point.
can I hear if that is a medium-term goal? Okay, I don't hear anything. So is that a short-term goal?
Yes.
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 Sure.
I heard about 5 and starting to get a little mixed up here. Is that a long-term goal?
Yes.
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 Okay, I think the long-term goal has it.
Mhm.
And then next are the ball fields. And so this would be how the importance of finding and more or less, I would say, undeveloped area for children's play or even adult play, whether it's baseball, soccer, maybe undeveloped for running your dog, that kind of thing. Not sure where that would be. Short, medium, or long-term. So would that be a long-term goal?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and would that be a medium-term goal?
Yes.
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 Okay, and just to get the rest of the voices in here, then the short-term goal.
Yes.
Okay, so I think on that one, the mediums have it. The next one would be adding basketball, pickleball, or tennis courts, north or east side, specifically serving the north or east side. Is that a long-term goal?
Yes.
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 Okay, about
Yes.
5, 6,
6.
7. So just to be sure, is this a medium goal?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's probably almost everybody, but I'm going to just ask, is it a short-term goal?
Yes.
Okay, the long-term goal has that one. And a cooperative agreement with North Coast Land Conservancy for trail use in the North Coast Land Conservancy lands or near Coxsey Creek or other areas. Short-term?
Yes.
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 Yep. That could be done quickly.
Just for completeness sake, then, anybody wanting a medium?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and anybody wanting that to be a long term? Okay, so a short-term goal has it on that. The time is 7:46. Carol, do you want feedback on this last page tonight? This is the existing parks capital improvement plan. Carol Connell.
If, I suppose we could do the same short, medium, long. These are existing parks, so that could help us in planning, but I know that's kind of
Okay, well,
tedious.
I know. We'll give it a try here, and then we'll
Mrs.
move
Mayor?
on to next steps. Go ahead.
Can I ask just a couple ideas, new parks to maybe add to the list that probably should have been on there? One was a restroom at 10th Street. Another one is not really come to the surface yet on any of this work, but it comes to City Hall a lot. And is, do we want to have a limit on the number of benches with plaques? And so that one is just maybe at this point more like, do you agree or disagree?
Carol, I think that is addressed.
It is addressed in the paperwork that we have.
Yeah,
No
that was addressed in
no
one
new
of the-
plaques, and if a bench goes down, the plaque does not migrate to the new bench.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. I'm sorry. I did know that. Cross that off. And then do we want to address the environmental integrity policies along with a 50-foot riparian setback at Little Beach that Sharon brought up? I'm not sure where we will go with that one, but we can also do that in the, if we can add it and do this in the next round. And I'm sorry, I've got one more that just came to mind, and that is the zone. The Parks and Open Space Zone has a very short list of uses, and we haven't discussed that at all. So I can just tell you what they are. The only permitted use in the zone is a temporary post-disaster shelter, debris storage, or heavy equipment storage. And that, of course, has to do with the tsunami. And then the 4 conditional uses in the park zone, that's a public park and recreation facility, a non-public recreation facility, a public service and public utility use, or a dwelling for a caretaker or watchman, or housing for staff that might be in one of those facilities. Do you think we should add that to our list? And is that important to, does anybody want to?
Could I comment on that? We did discuss that fairly extensively at the committee. You may not have been at that meeting, Carol, or you may be just forgetting it, but the conclusion was we're not trying to rewrite the zoning code. The zoning code says what's allowed. We're not trying to allow other things, but we're saying that now in the parks plan that we're hoping the council will commit itself to that with respect to the properties it owns. It's not necessarily, even though something might be allowed under the zoning code, the city is committing itself to how it's going to use its properties, but we're not trying to change the zoning code as to what would be allowed in the zone generally.
And okay, I do remember that. And as I've thought about it, and I'm already starting to write the staff report for the hearings. Normally, like the transportation system plan and other plans, you not only have the comprehensive policies being considered for adoption, but there's commonly an associated zoning code amendments that make it work. So this in the hearing stage, this would be the time to make sure we wouldn't want to have to come back to it later if we have any problem with the way it's written right now. That's mainly what I'm saying.
I don't think anybody on the committee would have any objection to modifying the zoning code to make it conform to the policy, but I also don't see that it's required because I don't think that we were recommending anything that would be contrary to the zoning code. But it's fine if you want to bring them more into sync.
I would just ask if it bothers anyone that there's a non-public recreation facility allowed in the zone.
Well, Carol, you got to remember that the zone applies not just to city-owned properties. For example, the Gearhart Golf Course is a private property. It's a non-public. It's private, owned by the public, and there are some others that are within neighborhoods that really are owned by homeowners associations that are not technically open to every member of the public.
Okay, that answers my question. We'll leave it as it is.
Our time is short, to finish on time. So I'm gonna say we need to, table at this time, the existing Parks Capital Improvement Plan. We will figure out another venue where we can, have a little more work session time to put a small, medium, or long-term goal to the existing parks improvements. What I heard earlier in the meeting from most of the participants is that it was felt that we can move forward with the Planning Commission public hearing. And I'd like to hear now if that is not something you think we're ready to do.
David Smith here. I think it's a little early for a public hearing on something that I think the public has very little insight, much less a chance to really talk it out among themselves and the city government. So it may be a tad early for a public hearing on this draft. Just my opinion.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on that? I guess the alternative would be to try and do some sort of Zoom conference to walk people through it in some way, either by staff or perhaps George would be so kind to walk people through it.
Mayor Plina,
Is that
there's also a deadline for this to for the funding to get this in by October, I think. So I think that could be weighed on some of this decision.
I did talk to the state parks today, and they would be absolutely fine with an extension for 2 or 3 months if you feel like you'd like one.
I guess what I'm feeling is that I would like to, if there's a consensus amongst the council and the commission, to allow George, if he would be so kind, and Carol, and any other members who would like to participate if needed. But if they could take the lead in just shoring up some of the language and some of the policy changes that we've heard tonight, to get a little bit more of a finalized document, and also to allow Carol a little more time to get a really good staff report together before we go to public hearing. That's what I'm feeling would be the best decision at this time.
Paulina, speaking kind of for the Planning Commission, there hasn't been a lot of knowledge about this plan out to the public. I know RJ's on this Zoom meeting, and I would hope that we would get good input at a public hearing from the community. And what we don't want to do is have it too early so they don't know anything about it, and it just kind of goes through, and then they're not happy with it.
So we'll need to do some communications, either some summary documents, blogging the links to the document. We can potentially, I don't think we can have a town hall in person right now, but we may be able to in a month. And then, ideally, it'd be great if we could have a public hearing in the fire hall or somewhere where we've got enough room. But I don't think we can do that next week.
So let's put it off a month.
Does that seem reasonable to try and get a little tighter draft done, get it out to the public in a variety of ways, allow Carol some time to put together a strong staff report, and then plan on the public hearing for the Planning Commission for October, and also for sure get that extension.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Paulina,
I
I'm
agree.
happy to work with staff, with Carol and Chad to try to finalize the document. My feeling is, of course, we want public input, and my feeling is we don't, that the whole point of the public hearing is to get public input. So my feeling is the sooner we get on with having a public hearing, the better, because we want to get the public input, and the hearing is how you do it. But obviously you got to make sure that it's been circulated widely so people have an opportunity to think about it before the hearing.
So we will, I would like to go ahead and hold off for a month. I will, I appreciate, George, that you're willing to sit down a little bit with Carol to polish this up. And next week I'll meet with Chad and we'll get a communication plan together for getting either a summary document out or highlights or the whole plan. We'll figure out how we can get that out to the public with them knowing that a public hearing will be coming.
Yep, I agree with that.
Well, it's 8 o'clock, and thank you all so much for your participation. George, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. It's really stellar work. All the committee members, you know, I know how hard everybody worked on this. It's really a great document, and I think we're well on our way.
I say thank you, Mayor Cockrum.
Yeah, well run meeting.
Yes.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay,
Bye.
good night.
Bye.
Good night.
See you later.
Night.
Bye.